I grew up as a Jew, and probably one of the most unforgettable things I heard in Sabbath school was that one day Jews would rule the world. Whether it was called the Messianic Age or a time of world peace, it all boiled down to the very same thing. Gentiles would be under the all-powerful thumb of modern Jewry. Now, what would be the signs of Jewish world control? And what will herald the time of its coming? Permit me to outline a few of those signs, and I'll let you decide whether or not the apocalypse indeed has already arrived. First of all, when you see the coining of money in the hands of the Jews, as we see in the case of the Jewish-owned Federal Reserve Bank that has risen to control the money of the world's leading superpower, America, then you'll know that Jews rule the world. Or when you see Jewish-crafted legislation that usurps the U.S. Constitution, as evidenced by the NDAA, sponsored by Jewish Senator Carl Levin, which authorizes the U.S. military to arrest American citizens without trial, and its recent amendment, sponsored by Jewish Senator Dianne Feinstein, which gives the military the implicit right to intrude upon civil law enforcement, which is forbidden by the Constitution, and at best gives the amendment's victim a military tribunal trial held at a Gitmo-style torture camp, then you'll know that Jews rule the world. Now, when it's crystal clear as day that the major mass media is owned by Jewish moguls, as is the case with CBS, ABC, and NBC, no, they're not corporate elites as Alex Jones and other Jewish apologists and shills would have us believe, then you'll know that Jewish rule is here to stay. Or when you see Jewish groups infiltrating our public schools and their curricula with degenerate, homosexual, and lurid Holocaust books, I can quickly point to the Jewish-run ADL and how the American Federation of Teachers, yes, Jewish-run, has approved vile books like Daddy's New Roommate, Ken, Daddy's Wedding, Daddy Marries Ken, and that perennial book of lies by the fraud high priest of Holocaustianity, Elie Wiesel's Night. Then you'll know that Jews have gained an unbreakable lock on young people's minds and souls. And when you see international Jewish finance capital installing Gentile shills as heads of nations and their central banks, as evidenced by Jewish investment bank Goldman Sachs, with its squad of Goldman goys, then you'll know that Jews rule the world. Of course, none of this will mean much to you if your head is buried in beer, Prozac, and Super Bowl Sunday. But if you're wide awake, then that Jewish age of total control we were told about as children, sadly, unquestionably, absolutely, you won't have to wait 100 years from now, has decisively arrived. The process of international integration, known as globalization, contrary to popular belief, is not at all a new phenomenon impacting the modern world. In fact, globalization began with the reign of King Solomon some 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. It was Solomon who opened up the trade routes where the import and export of goods and services reached far beyond the borders of Israel. Religious historians tell us that this was a great boon to the world, for not only were people's lives enriched by international trade, but the redemptive message of the God of Israel and his promised salvation through the coming Messiah was being sown globally. Today, Jews continue to govern the world's trade routes, But their worldview is far different than their distant ancestors. It's a worldview that denies the messiahship of Jesus Christ and instead fosters an exchange of ideas and culture that undermines the saving message of the church. Jewry's oligarchs of globalization sow the seeds of religious and cultural disunity, where only one agenda holds governance, a program of Jewish world dominance. You see, it's Jewish finance capital that fuels and motors the entire apparatus of globalization, and its agents such as Kissinger and Associates, SWIFT, whose chief operating officer is Stefan Zimmerman, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, chaired by Gary Gensler, former partner of Goldman Sachs, ensure that Jewry's global trade routes will never fall into Christian hands. A Jewification of the globe is at work, my friends, where the hidden motto, dilute and conquer, is inflicting its pernicious results. For the highly touted exchange of ideas and culture has all but obliterated the celebration of Christmas from Western civilization. For after all, globalization is entirely a Jewish affair. That's why Hanukkah and not Christmas is celebrated every December by presidents, chancellors, and prime ministers, and government-sponsored slogans wishing everyone Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, and Happy Kwanzaa Day, whatever the heck that is, have seized Merry Christmas from the tongues of the globalized masses. To be sure, Hanukkah is an AntiChrist symbol which says, "You stupid goys, Jesus Christ is not the Messiah." During this time when we celebrate Christ's holy birth, a different kind of globalization is offered to the world. A globalization where a true unity of peoples and nations is still an option, which can bring an end to our Christless, Jewified, Hanukkah world. The popular saying, "You can't see the forest for the trees," is a most fitting lens through which we can peer into the terrible issues we now face in America. The pressing issue of the day is preventing the Second Amendment from being eviscerated by the likes of Senators Feinstein, Schumer, Blumenthal, and Boxer, all Jews, and all rated F by the NRA. Added to these notorious advocates of registering the names and possessions of private gun owners are Michael Bloomberg, Abe Foxman, Sarah Silverman, Alan Dershowitz, and George Soros, again, all Jews, and all F-rated in the minds of millions of Americans who care about our Constitution. But there are larger issues far beyond the Jewish push to trash the Second Amendment. And these issues threaten what we once took for granted in America, that there would always be a future for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren as well. Ron Paul tells us that it's a question of education, that if we educate the public, showing them that the government is limited to protecting our liberties and pursuit of property, then everything will be okay. But I say it's a lost cause, because education, the press, and the entire mainstream media, the avenues through which opinions and worldviews are formed, are all controlled by the same Jewish hands as those that seek to take away our guns and register our names and track essentially everything about our lives. The American Federation of Teachers, founded by the Jew Albert Shanker, and now led by Randy Weingarten, yes, Jewish, and the Anti-Defamation League, led by Abe Foxman, have taken full control of the curriculum of our public schools, pushing the Jewish program of intensified centralization, where big government can do no wrong, because Jewry owns it. In academia, an overweening influence of Jewry prevails, especially in Ivy League schools, where we find Jews in high places, provosts, chancellors, and those who provide huge endowments, like Sanford Weill, known as the Godfather of Wall Street, whose Joan and Sanford Weill Medical College stands as a monument to Jewish prestige at Cornell University. David Skorton, president of Cornell, provides a fitting illustration of the Jewish stamp, now imprinted on what were once white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant academic institutions, Harvard included. For with so many Jews holding high and honorary positions at Harvard, what was founded as a Presbyterian seminary in 1636 looks more like a Jewish yeshiva today. You're probably wondering why I titled this video, Trends to Watch in 2013. Here's why. Gun registrations pushed by Jewry will begin at gun shops under the auspices of U.S. Customs, and that's some inside information. Jobs will continue to be offshored, pushed by Jewish Wall Street, while unemployment soars. Obamacare will crush small businesses and wipe out the middle class. Tens of thousands will lose their homes while the purchasing power of the dollar, pushed down by the Jewish Federal Reserve, will plunge, while the lie that we're in an economic recovery will continue to be spun by the lying White House. But if we can clearly see the forest along with the trees, then what's good for the Jews and what's very bad for everyone else is the only trend to watch for in 2013.